So our first topic we have here, or actually our only topic, is luck in board games. And we're going to talk about basically the discussion of luck, how much luck we like there to be, how much luck we like to be able to have there and be able to mitigate. How can you over mitigate your luck to where it's almost pointless? You know, some of our favorite games with luck. What do you like about luck? It's kind of an open discussion, although I do have a couple of bullet points that we can follow here. The first thing is, how much luck is too much luck? Anybody want to step on that one?
I would say it definitely depends on the game. You know, the longer the game, the less luck you want in that game. There's short games, you know, you don't mind if there's more luck involved because it's a short game, and sometimes it's just fun for, you know, going after a certain risk reward, you know, doing some dice or drawing a certain card. So
that's fair, right? Yeah, like something like that's 10 minutes. It doesn't matter how lucky it is, because it could just be a lot of fun, not really a great game.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna spend 3 hours playing a game, yeah, it doesn't need to be a dice fest.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And it sort of depends on what we're really considering luck.
Uh-huh.
That's actually one of the other bullet points. So what do you dice are obviously a luck factor.
Right.
But not all dice I feel are that lucky. Like for instance, in City of Remnants, the dice are like 1s, 2s, and 3s. So it's not as big of a range as like a D6, where you have a 6 on the range. And especially if you're adding all the values up, that's a huge range.
You're averaging that luck down.
Right, yeah. Like War Machine, you roll 2 dice and you add them together, so you're going to average around a 7 with 2 6-sided dice. But if you're doing other games where you roll like a bunch of numbers and just add them all up, I guess it's the same. Never mind.
No, I was
thinking where you do an individual.
I would say, you know, with a bigger pool that you actually that is sort of mitigating because you're doing it over more dice.
Right, yeah. I kind of stopped myself halfway through and realized I was going to say that. But what I was meaning to say is, if you have for instance, you're playing a game that has like an attack stat and you get to roll a die to add to that stat. If it's a 6-sided die, it's one thing. In games like Pathfinder and everything, the card game and stuff, you're rolling like a 20-sided die. So it's a huge range to possibly hit something. That is almost too much luck to me.
Right.
If you're like 3 plus a 20-sided die is not as cool as 8 plus a 6-sided die. Because the range is, I like ranges. I like luck because certain games do deterministic combat and deterministic strategies very well. But it is nice to have that luck because it allows you to possibly get ahead or do things that you normally wouldn't do.
And you can hope for stuff.
You can hope for stuff, yeah.
And that's fun. It's like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to give it a go.
I just need that 6.
Right.
I need 1 6. Bam.
Yeah.
So you're telling me there's a chance.
Right.
Tell me.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Got a chance. All right.
It brings drama into the game if the luck is there.
Yeah.
If you can pull from behind and do something incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool moments in games that we get to experience sometimes because of luck.
That's a very fair point, because if you're playing something massively strategic, like for instance, like Mage Knight, the board game, there's not a lot of luck in that game. I mean, about the only luck is like the fact that you draw cards at the beginning of your turn.
Yeah.
But there's so many ways to utilize those cards, and you have so many options that it almost doesn't feel like luck.
Right.
It's really about how you plan yourself or plan your turn out. So it is really cool to see like those fun, like what do you call it when somebody comes from behind?
Underdog.
Yeah, the underdog. It's like, I'm gonna punch the giant in the face, and you're rolling the 20 on that natural hit. Yeah. So what do y'all think about like cards? So we talked about dice kind of, but what about cards? How lucky do you consider those most of the time?
I think it depends on how they're used. If we're talking about a longer strategy game, then there's what I personally bothers me quite a bit is if it's the setup of the game and you're just starting out. And you get this hand of cards.
Right. You just happen to.
And I'm looking at this hand of cards and they're miserable, right? And then you're looking at yours and going, oh well, I can do
I
just
did
about
really
everything.
Good. Yeah.
Thanks for handing the game to me.
Yeah. So if the beginning, if the setup has that kind of randomness to it, then that's luck that doesn't sit well with me usually.
Right. And then there's some games, if you just happen to get this one really special card or these two really special cards together, you win the game.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think about that in like CCGs?
Well, I mean, there's always luck. I mean, you can maximize your deck the best you can for the draw, but you do have luck involved on what you pull, when you're going to pull it. I guess if you want to try and customize it and be a toolbox where you go and pick what you want when you want, I mean, that's a viable strategy sometimes. But
if you have those card powers that let you draw from the deck.
So, so I mean, there's always luck in pretty much any board game, I guess there is. And even if it's, we're talking about cards, so like, I know you're talking about Alhambra, depending on what you got in your hand bases what's in front of you. And what was the other game we played not that long ago with the four sides?
Council of Blackthorn?
Yes. So based on what I'm drawing and I'm trying to achieve on the board and what's rolled to give me a decent option. I mean,
it's almost like the moons have to align.
Yeah, you can kind of get blocked just based on what you're drawing, and it's like I cannot do anything with these cards. So
Yeah.
I agree. That sort of situation with Alhambra, you don't have much mitigation unless you use those extra Queenie modules.
Yeah.
Right. So if there's mitigation, then I don't mind it at all. If you're playing a Game of Thrones, the card game, and your deck is designed to get you more card draw, then that's one thing. But if you made your deck so that you focus on something else, and now your opponent is just getting rid of all your cards and you don't have any draw, it's not really the luck of the cards that did that to you. You did that to yourself.
Right.
Yeah. And that brings us to one point that actually was going to be the original topic, but I elaborated more, which was, can you over mitigate a game to make it unfun or whatever? Is too much mitigation bad? And then I started thinking about, it's like, why don't we just talk about luck and, the idea behind it, because mitigation is part of that.
Yeah.
Right.
And the reason we brought this up, though, is we haven't talked about this game, but Dice Settlers has a massive amount of mitigation. And it kind of comes down to, are we even rolling dice? Why are we, why don't I just pick what I want?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you lose dice in the mitigation, but I don't feel like there was many turns in the couple times I played it where I didn't get to do what I wanted to an extent.
Yeah.
I always got to do plan A, or if I didn't get to do plan A, I always got to do plan B.
You get to a point in the game where you can do, if you've built your dice engine well, then you can get to that point where you can do everything, and then it just doesn't seem useful.
Yeah. Right. And it's not that it made it a bad game, it's just like, what's the point in dice at this point? Most, like, just give me action points and I'll spend them.
Right.
So
yeah, it did feel it feels to me like that one maybe mitigates too much.
Yeah.
Right? And I think I've said on here before that I think that Tidal Blades might have the same issue just from what I've watched. But I haven't played it, so I can't really say.
That's fair. Do you like, how much mitigation do you like? Do you like a lot of mitigation in dice or cards or what?
I definitely like mitigation in both points. Just because, you didn't roll a certain thing or you didn't get, a card or cards that you needed. So it gives you, different mitigation tactics to, save your turn or make something better than it, would have been.
Yeah.
So I like mitigation quite a bit in games.
What, you, Matt?
Yeah, I think it needs to be there just so that you don't feel like your turn is ruined.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't get to do nothing.
You might not get exactly what you want. I guess to George's point of maybe I'm not getting A, but I can at least get B.
Right.
It feels somewhat like I did something that's in my power.
Yeah.
Right. There are some games that make use of this in sort of amazing ways, like Marco Polo, Voyages of Marco Polo, where there's a character, you get to just set your dice to whatever you want.
Right.
Those characters are so overpowered. That's just one example. But the others are also so overpowered that it doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing, too, is because some powers, it's like at first you think they're overpowered, but it's really just no-brainer. Like, I like to call them like the no-brainer powers. Like, it doesn't take a lot of thought to be able to use this thing throughout the game, whereas this other power, you have to kind of like stage it.
Strategize it a little bit more.
Right. And so the payoff is higher if you know the game already, but first couple of playthroughs, it may not seem as good. And so that comes down to like the luck thing. If a game has some luck throughout it, like throughout this whole podcast,
Still
it's like
raining.
storm radar. Basically, if I forgot what I was saying, if the game has, some character powers that highly mitigate for you, those are so much easier and seem broken at first because if the game is about luck mitigation and your guy's like, oh, I'll mitigate it,
Yeah.
then that's like a little bit too much probably.
Yeah, but in some games, perhaps in that game, it doesn't seem to be.
No, right, yeah, right, because all the powers, there might be one that I didn't like, but for the most part, all of them I thought were really good.
Yeah. Yep.
So, anyway, I mean, what kind of like components would you rather see luck in? I mean, do you all like games with tons of dice? Do you like games with tons of tiles, cards? I mean, what's your favorite type of luck-based games? Or, I mean, I guess that's kind of
I like all those
it
games.
depends. Yeah. Well, I know, like,
I like it to have them all.
well, it's interesting because you read about people's comments and stuff on Board Game Geek for certain games, and they're like, I can't believe this game has dice. I don't want any dice in my game.
That's true. Some people are just
Against
anti-luck.
dice. Because a lot of times they view having dice in there as
a Ameritrash.
as being very luck based, and if you're more in the Euro mindset, where you're going to try to minimize that luck and go more for strategy versus luck, you might not want dice to be a factor in your game, whereas if there's a decent amount of mitigation tactics, then those dice might not come into effect as much.
I found the silent mode.
Oh, good. It's interesting when you look at Euro gamers and what they've said about games. An example that comes to my mind is Orleans. And people would say, it's not like other, I guess, bag builders where you put things in your bag and then you take them out until they all come out. So you know what's coming when.
Right.
In Orleans,
like a deck builder.
you take some out, but then you put them all back in for the next round. And so it really is luck as to
what
you
getting
get
out.
each time. And so people would complain about that and say, that's too much luck because this is a serious Euro. And to me, it really...
It's also up to you to build your bag the way that might
you
work
want. You
better
could-
for you, though.
well, yeah, exactly.
Start thinning it down.
Yes, there is luck, but it's also on you to build for
Yeah.
that.
And for me, it comes down to, does the luck in the game make sense as far as the theme of the game goes? And if we're talking about, medieval France, your workers aren't going to do what you want them to do every time because they weren't the most reliable crew, right? So that luck makes total sense to me. Like today, well, the monks just didn't show up.
Right. And that kind of leads me over to like games with combat too. Like, I get it, deterministic combat where it's like, I play these 3 cards and it equals 13. What do you got? That's not as fun as actually adding a little bit of dice roll or some sort of randomness to it. Because if I swing a sword at you, you don't know, like, no one knows what's going to happen in a battle when you're there.
Yeah.
You could deflect off their helmet and hit your own self. No, I mean, if you roll a 1, but
Right.
like that idea behind a little bit of luck, because you can always pull off the incredible or always mess up, even though how good you are.
Yeah.
Like, I think it should always steer more to, and that's, I always come back to this. So people listening to our podcast a lot will get sick of it, but like War Machine, like you take your attack and you add a 2-sided or 2 6-sided dice together. And so your attack looks more like a pyramid. So you're always going to be mostly in the middle with the idea of being on the ends. Whereas in like D&D, when you hit, you roll a 20-sided die and that number is, it can be it's the same ratio of chance. So I can roll this, I can roll a 15 the same as I can a 2. If that makes sense, because it's one die rolling the outcome. Even though you got a modifier that you add on to it, you're still only adding the extra number on a flat scale. Whereas in War Machine, you roll 2 6-sided dice. It's a diamond probability chart. So it depends on the combinations. There's more combinations to make a 7, so you're more likely to add up a 6, 7, or 8 than you would to roll a 12 because there's only one combination for that. So there's the chance that you can, like in War Machine, you never give up ever, and because it's like chess, like you're not out of the game until your Warcaster is dead.
Okay.
So you can come down to the Warcaster, and I like when we play with Eric and Jake and them, I'm like, trust me, do not give up. That could be the only model on the field, and they have 15 or 20, and you can still win the game. which is amazing because you can run up there, you can roll, bam, you can boost the dice, you can roll 3 6-sided dice and hit all 3 6s and just obliterate something. Now the chances are super low on that.
Right.
But it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like chess where you're playing Bobby Fischer and he has a stroke while you're playing.
Yeah. There's a chance.
There's a chance.
There's a chance.
Is this a thing? What is?
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, how about it actually did not happen? I won due to technicality.
I hope he's never had a stroke.
Yeah. So,
but the thing is, you could win against him, maybe.
that's true. Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not a high
It's
chance.
not.
Or you look at
There's probably not a lot of because chess is not really luck based. It's
No,
it's
right.
about
No.
mistake based.
Okay, but I'm just talking about things that involve skill. I don't know how much skill is in War Machine, but if you had, sometimes Cristiano Ronaldo trips,
Well, this would be like, okay, so in chess, it's a very good comparison because in chess, you have your king, that's your vulnerable piece. When it's dead, you lose the game, and all your other pieces have this own movement and the way that the strategies behind it. Exact same thing with War Machine. You build this army that has this like idea to it, but all your pieces have a specific role and like kind of almost like not really like paper rock scissors, but some are better at going against certain units or whatnot. But your Warcaster in this case is more like your queen and king because it is your most powerful unit, but it's also your most weakest because if you lose it, you lose.
This is a tournament game.
Can be.
Yeah, mostly.
Do the same people win the tournaments all the time?
Like the same people or like the same models and factions?
People like does skill play a big
Skill
part?
plays a huge part. It's
Yeah,
not like
okay.
going to a board game tournament.
It's kind of like chess, where
Yeah.
you're trying to position in different areas and do specific things
But even the most skilled person can run up and roll 2 1s
right.
and auto miss you, and then you get to retaliate, which it's unlikely. And that's what I was saying with the luck factor is your luck is mitigated by the fact that you have an average roll, and the lows and the highs are harder to achieve. Whereas in other games like D&D and stuff like that, you have a flat average, or you don't have an average. You have a flat chance to get every number on the same dice.
Okay.
So that's why I like games that include a lot of dice and you add them together because it does self-mitigate is what we were talking about earlier. Whereas if you roll 1 die and you're just reliant on what it rolls, it's not as, it is more lucky.
I agree with you in terms of not enjoying deterministic combat.
Mm-hmm.
I like to have some variability there, unless the deterministic combat is something that you've really built up over several turns and you've
It's
earned
like,
it.
Yeah.
I've set this up 3 turns.
I just don't get why people like. I'm not a big fan of a lot of Ameritrash quote unquote games.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Mostly the combat games I like is 1-on-1. So I don't like a lot of the games that are like 4-player. Like Wildlands is totally an exception, right?
Yeah.
But even so, that's more deterministic combat. It's just you have it, you're going to do it unless they stop you.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I like that, but most time I don't like deterministic combat, or where you mitigate all the luck essentially.
How about in Lifeboat, you add a 1 die 3 to everyone involved in any combat?
It's like, I get a little boost.
The kid really got a good one in on you.
Actually, you could just probably house roll the swig of beer or whatever to be a D6.
Sure.
Because then you're you could be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 instead of just a flat 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Matt, your character, you would have to roll it for yourself because then it wouldn't always be countering.
Right.
Actually, that would probably be bad. You probably want to counter it because that's the whole point of yours is you nullify it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Next time we play.
Yep. Well, anyway, anything else with luck? Any other thoughts?
No,
I like it when I gamble.
Yeah. I like it when I win.
Yeah. That's deterministic with the house.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, anyway, we got one last thing for you.